welcome to the Hotel News Now Podcast Network. I'm Dana Miller, senior reporter with H&M. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, but it's about to get a whole lot better because we've got two fantastic women as guests on this episode. We've got Eve Moore, who is Divisional Vice President of Operations at Remington Hospitality, and we have Kristie Dickinson, Managing Director and EVP of CHMWarnick. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Dana, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks.
And I'll first share with our listeners that the idea behind having you both on this podcast at the same time was seeing you both at an industry event, and you both didn't know that each other were going to be there. But once you did see each other, I saw from across the room how much your faces lit up, and it just made me want to know the story behind this friendship. And I think it ties well into a reoccurring theme that I heard last week at the Hunter Conference. I don't know if either of you were there, but a lot of what was said was how important it is to build relationships and leverage them. So to start off, I would love to know, how did you two become friends in this industry?
Yeah, so Eve and I like to joke, that we met where all the leading women in hospitality connect, right?
Yes.
Castell Project.
Oh,
That's
yes.
where it all
Right.
began. That's where it all began. Or as it was originally called, and now, of course, Castell has sort of rolled into AH&LA, the forward umbrella there. But when Castell was originally founded by Peggy Berg, of course, Eve was on the board, and I had gone through the program and first met Eve there, and then was later active on the advisory council for Castell at College, and just spent a whole lot of time around that whole movement. It was hard to not be a part of it. So through that, really, Eve and I had the opportunity to get to know one another. And then from there, would always be very excited to find each other at industry conferences as well.
Yes.
It helps just a little bit too that we were becoming empty nesters about the same time. So we did do a slight bit of bonding over where we were in life. But I think just kind of to go back to the purpose of Castell Project, and now obviously forward, it was about advancing women in leadership in the hospitality business. And so I think that and I'm sure you've reported on this and you know these things, but it was really about building competencies, it was coaching, and then it was about building the network. Because when we started the program, it wasn't just about giving women the job, which we, pulled together lots of data and reasons why that was a good idea, but it was about building women so that they could also keep the job.
Right.
And I think that the importance of that is networking, right? And so we had this vision at this dinner table in Atlanta in 2016, and we start seeing these exceptional women coming through the program. And for me, it all came home. We were at Alice. I don't know, probably the year after Kristie had gone through, and we were kind of congregating around the collateral booth, right?
Okay.
Because at this point, we were still in our infancy, and we were trying to get the word out there, right? Like women in leadership lead to better bottom lines, and here's how we can prove it to you. So we had this group of women kind of gathering around. Oh my gosh, it's so great to see you again. And one of the women had just gotten a new job. And so there was a celebration of that, right? Oh, congratulations, we're so glad. And then one of the other women, I think from a different cohort, said, oh my gosh, I've done business with that organization before. And if you'd like, we can set some time together and I'll help you navigate through some of the things that I understand about the way that they run. And so I was standing there kind of like a proud mother, like I got goosebumps and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly, I think I stopped the conversation. Kristie, I think you were there beside me. I was like, this is exactly the vision that we had when we rolled out this program from its infancy. It's just happening right in front of our eyes. So that's a silly story, but it was kind of like that moment in time that showed really the power of what networking and the Castell and now Forward organization have to offer. So Kristie and I are lifelong friends because of our connection there, as we are with many others.
Absolutely. And totally shout out to Peggy Berg. At Hunter, she did, with, of course, AHLA have an event called the Table Talk where so many women and men too joined together. I think it was like over 200 people, and we got to just, sit at tables with, about 10 people at each table and just talk through issues that they're having and how to best support each other. And we couldn't have done that without Peggy from the beginning and others that support her. And it just goes to show how beneficial groups like that are for all generations and at any point in your career. And see, look at you two now. You two are proof that it really was
Look at us.
helpful.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I totally forgot about that sidebar crying session, Eve, when we were talking about our kids. So thanks for bringing a little bit of PTSD just came back into my life.
Sorry.
But it was a bonding moment for sure.
Authentically connected forever, right?
Right.
Bonding through trauma, always great, right? So let's take it back.
Support. It was support.
Yes, that's what we need.
I was crying too.
Let's take it back even a little further before that. And I'd love to know kind of what inspired both of you to enter the hospitality industry and then ultimately stay in it for these many years.
So I'll start. I have a pretty non-traditional entry into the hospitality business. I actually was a CPA by trade out of college. And, I'm curious about, Gen Z and millennial, because I think that's who I was in my 20s as well. And so I have this great job with the #1 CPA firm in the country who later folded, but they were awesome. They taught me how to be creative with accounting. And so I was questioning kind of what I wanted to do and if this was the life that I wanted to have. And so being responsible and having a degree in finance, I decided to go one step away from that to see if it's really finance that would be interesting to me, or if I just needed to throw in the towel and do something else. And so I got a job at Promise corporate headquarters in Memphis in the regional finance office. So I had, a handful of properties. I was the analyst and the senior analyst for that group. And so I did that for a little while, and I realized two things. One, these guys in the hotels were getting these huge bonuses, and I was helping them get them, and I was not bonus eligible. So that was kind of one piece. And then the other piece, which is a little bit more appropriate, was I was not really I felt a longing to help make it happen as opposed to reporting on it after the fact. And so I did one more step in an attempt at work-life balance. I moved my husband and my 1-year-old to New York City to work at a hotel as director of finance. And I think just with each step, I got closer and closer to really wanting to be part of building the team, creating the strategy and executing the strategy. And I was very fortunate to have built a reputation, I think, with some decision makers that supported me in learning, kind of going from the back way in, right? People say, you don't have a finance personality. I think I do. But I think that having that beginning with finance and then transitioning into operations has helped me speak a better language to owners and others, but I don't have the same story that many do of starting right in college and growing up through the ranks. So that's been something that I've worked through over my career, but it's just such a good career. I don't know why how anyone could leave it. We see people who leave for a while and come back because I think once hospitality gets in your blood, you just can't leave it. It's a battle every day. It's a victory every day. The teams that you work with are friends for life because of all the good things that you do together. So it's just impossible, I think, to replace.
Yeah, so and I think to the point you make about, you did finance, you probably got a degree in that in college, but maybe at the time you didn't know that you could do finance and hospitality. So having maybe, more advocates for teaching these college age students that, yes, you can do these types of careers in hospitality and love it like you do. But
absolutely.
Kristie, let's hear your story.
Yeah, I'm kind of wishing I went first now. My start in hospitality was in high school.
Yours is better.
I got into hospitality in high school, and I think my motivation was a little less cerebrals than Eve's, but I worked at the Stouffer Westchester Hotel in White Plains. And I say that because it was owned by Nestle Corporation.
Wow.
So probably the biggest perk and benefit that really sealed the deal for me was all the free chocolate I could eat. So that's how I got in. But thank God I got in. There was a
Right.
general manager at that hotel. She was female. I still remember her name. Her name was Deborah Kincains, and she really took me under her wing. I mean, again, I'm working in high school, after school, and then that eventually parlayed into summers. And she really made it her mission to kind of move me around to all different departments, get me as much exposure as I could to the different aspects of the operation. And she really pushed me to learn more and inspired me. And, we always talk about this, right? You don't believe it's possible if you don't see someone that looks like you. And so at a time, I hate to say, like 35 years ago,
rounds to 20
in round numbers,
Totally.
it's probably less than that. I'm not good at the numbers, but she, I don't even think I realized kind of what a special thing it was.
Yes.
And then now it's looking back and realizing what I had been exposed to back then and how much it meant to me, and where it really took me on my journey, is really incredible. And so she really was the one that let me lead a path to that in school. And I studied that in school and was later in operations. Then spent some time with one of the brands, getting to know the management and franchise side of the business, and then sort of eventually fell into consulting and asset management where I am today, which I think for me personally, having that position where you're able to work on the finance and investment side of the business, but also stay very plugged in on an operational level, that's just really the sweet spot for me and what I absolutely love about my job in this industry overall.
That's just priceless, having someone like Deborah as a GM to just give you so many opportunity to try different things and learn what fits with your personality. I know, Eve, you just said someone was like, well, you don't have a finance personality, but you feel you do. And how else can you figure that out if you don't try other things as well? So that's amazing.
We're redefining finance personality, right?
Yes, there you
That's
go.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. I think that Kristie and I, based on our stories, are both beneficiaries of people seeing something in us that we didn't necessarily see in ourselves, and giving us opportunities that pushed us before we realized that we needed pushing. I have many of those as I look back on my career, and I hear Kristie's story, and I see that she does too. And kind of when you think about the joy of being in our industry, the ability to find that potential in others and help them see a course or a path that they may never have expected, I think is one of the most fulfilling parts of the job.
Yeah, everyone needs someone like that, and unfortunately not everyone does, and we are lucky to have people like that in our lives. But as you said, now being that to people that are coming up in an industry is just, again, priceless to be that for somebody.
Totally.
So what do you feel the value is of having friendships like yours in the industry, and how do you two really lean on each other when times are, tough within your respective companies, or just in life, or, when headwinds are coming at you hard and you just need a little bit of extra support from those that you trust?
Yeah, I think for me, having a friend in the industry really kind of just ties back to generally the value of a network overall. I do happen to think, and some of what we were just talking about, having friends, and I have male and female friends, and they all have great value to me personally and in this industry. But having female friends, I think it's just someone that can sort of understand where you're coming from, and like Eve said, knowing when to push you, knowing when to encourage you. They may sense those insecurities at times and really be that person to lift you up, someone who can kind of help validate on a very real level. And then I think, just generally we're all trying to excel, right, in our respective businesses. And I think that there's a lot to be gained to just having connections that can help really propel one another, not just personally, but from a business sense. no better feeling when you're making a connection and you're able to do deals
Yes.
with women that you've met in the industry.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kristie. I think kind of going back to the vision, right, from the very, very beginning, people do business with people that they trust, and with, lower representation of women in leadership at the time and lower representation of women at conferences and things like that, it might have been more difficult for us to find each other, right? Find each other, become friends, and then trust one another enough to, as Kristie says, do business together. And so I think when you look at the golf course handshake business deals, right? Like what we're kind of working on with females. Well, and Kristie and I had a nice hangout on her sofa Saturday night in Boston a few weekends ago. So that was awesome, right? But we're creating these relationships, or we're creating at least a foundation for these relationships so that women can then get into these roles and, to Kristie's point, advance business, right?
Yeah.
That's the way that you stick. You stick because you know someone who's a subject matter expert, or you know someone who you can contact and who will answer your call, who will answer the right questions, ask you ones to be thought-provoking, right, to help you do a better job. And then those that you can call and say, I know these guys, I trust them. We've gotten to know each other over the course of many years. And so as we're looking at an RFP process, or, this, that, or the other thing, and getting something done, which is the achievement that we're looking for, and that's what we need to be relevant, right, in our roles, that helps it happen. So.
Right. And, your roles do overlap some in terms of, knowledge and skill set in departments, but there may be some differences. And I'd love to kind of hear, what you do learn from each other as you kind of look at each other's roles and what you each do at your respective companies, and any takeaways that you feel you've shared with each other and can bring then back to your companies.
So I think that what we've decided is that we're more similar than different, in that our job, our job is to add value, right?
Yes.
Increase the value of the asset, add value to the owner. And then, but sometimes the way that we go about it might be a little bit different, right? So Kristie, I'll let you start or I'll ask you to start from your perspective.
Yeah, nothing like taking the wind out of her question. Is she's like, how are you different? And we're like, we're the same. We are the same. We do.
That's right.
I guess I got that question wrong.
We do have the same goal. No, I think
it was an awesome question.
We have very similar goals, but like you said, we have different perspectives. And so I think my perspective is rooted more so on the ownership and investment side, but with the recognition that so much of the value and the potential for my clients to realize their returns, it's really tied to the effectiveness of the team on the ground, right? And so that's all operations. And so for me to be successful in my role, I have to have a very close rapport, have empathy for this team, really kind of be in a position to put myself in their shoes to understand, what they're doing. And it's really sort of this master balancing of all the different stakeholders. And I think in our conversations that I've had with Eve, we talk about those shared perspectives, and it's really given me helpful insight to understand the operator's reality. And that just helps me be more effective in my job, and trying, like I said, to really foster these close, relationships with the teams. Helps me in asset management. It also helps me with consulting jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think from my standpoint, I agree with what Kristie said, right? We put the reality into the spreadsheet. So things look good on paper, and either they are good and they're a stretch for us as the operator, right? Because there's a healthy stretch that we all require, or we may have the insight to understand that this won't work, but maybe here's another option, and we can work together to come up with the same, like a shared goal, but a different path to get there. I think that, and Kristie said it well, it's about the team that's on the ground. And I think, we have, I laugh because I grew up in a different path, right? And there was a time that I didn't really even realize that a hotel was an investment for someone, right? Because as you grow up in the industry, you are taught it's the guest, it's the guest, it's the team, it's the team, it's the guest, it's the guest, it's the brand, right?
Yep.
And so at some point when you realize that you're an investment for someone, and it happens at different phases in our careers, right? Then you're like, holy cow, okay, this is a whole new perspective. So, and I had it a while ago, just for the sake of my personal or my professional reputation. I would like to clarify. This is not a new revelation for me, but I did have a revelation at one point along the way. And so when you look at the GMs and their teams out there who are leading with their hearts, right? Kind of doing the grind on a daily basis of making sure every guest is satisfied. And then you have the owner coming in with strategy and, NOI and all these things. How do you balance it? You balance it by remembering that it's a people business, right?
Yes.
And so as hotel operators, our teams are generally fairly dutiful. And so once they realize what an owner's objectives are, as long as that owner has put some deposits into the emotional bank from time to time, I think, appreciation, thank yous, empathy when possible, kind of understanding, just sometimes those comments or statements can go a long way towards refilling that operating team. I think then we're more cohesive as a group. I think that's the key to everything. I had a lender, I was a GM, I was walking with my owner's lender. The owner couldn't be there for the tour. And this guy, we had the best conversation, and we were standing at my indoor pool, and he said something to me like, I recognize that the value of the asset is directly tied to the general manager, because it's how engaged you are, how competent, right? And, informed you are, but really it's about the team you build and the strategies that you execute. And I thought, for this lender to know this, right? I've carried it with me. And as I've worked with asset managers and others throughout the years, I'm always looking for that person who recognizes the value of the engaged GM and the engaged team in terms of driving the value of their asset. So it's fascinating.
Yes, and I love that part about really just a team. I heard Julianne Smith say last week at Hunter that she looks for people that have a we instead of me mindset, and that really just makes all the difference in terms of your team. Turning more to business side of things, Kristie, from an asset management owner advisory perspective, what do you feel are the biggest challenges for the industry right now?
I'd love to sound original, but coming sort of hot off of two major industry conferences, there'll probably be some repetition here, because I think, improving or even maintaining profit margins right now in face of rising costs, whether that's labor or otherwise, that's certainly a major focus in our shop, and has been for the last 24 months in particular. And I think what that means for us is we're really looking to try to develop new strategies to drive value for our clients in an already tight operating environment. Interest rates certainly is a big one, and just because investments are stalled, I think that's been a challenge for sure. We have a lot of clients right now that they're facing decisions around possibly refinancing or how much capital to reinvest in the assets, and all of these decisions or where they're finding themselves today are not necessarily part of the original underwriting or investment plan, because they've sort of been extended well beyond where they thought they might be in these assets. So, I think that's necessitated by market conditions, but that's a major challenge in this industry as well. But I think longer term, I think a lot about the impact of brand proliferation, the age of these properties, and some of these boxes that may either physically or be in locations that are sort of obsolete or on their way out, and sort of what that will mean for them in future. And I guess the flip side to challenges is that these are all great opportunities for us in my firm to sort of show the value of an experienced advisor to help owners and investors kind of navigate through and think about, what's next.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, I'll skip down to a later question before I get to you, Eve, is maybe what you're hearing most from clients, question-wise. Kristie, where are you seeing investors feel the most pinched during the investment cycle? Anything that you can mention on that?
I think that a lot of it ties back to what I was just talking about. They're
Yep.
trying to understand now, um, where should I invest? Should I spend this capital? I think where we're it's less of a question and analysis now that the brands are coming back in pretty full force and saying,
Yep.
yes, you need to do this redo. So it's less of a when, and
Right.
it's more of a how.
Yep.
And I think, to be optimistic, I think some of the questions we're being asked is, our investors are very savvy and they're always looking ahead. I think they're getting excited for the back half of this year. And so some of the questions they're asking are, where do we invest next? What's next? Where do we go? Where do you see the market going? Where do you see the opportunities? Where are we going to get great returns? So a lot of the questions aren't sort of dwelling on the here and now. Everyone knows things are going to free up. We're helping clients look ahead and figure out where to go next.
I like that. What's next? Eve, how about you? Some challenges that you're seeing from third-party management perspective?
Well, I think we heard it from the owner perspective, right? So our constant goal is to balance the owner's expectations with the operating reality. So, some of the markets have stabilized, some of them haven't. We have to be agile and do our best to meet the demand. But we have to have the right lens, to Kristie's point, right? What's the age? What's the condition? Where should we be positioned in this market? What does success look like? And it's kind of, success is different for each asset because it depends on all those different factors. I think that, to Kristie's point, the brands are getting more serious about, then they were wonderful to us, right, for many years as things were difficult. And now it's important to them to keep their brand integrity. And in order to do that, they have to be tough on us as operators, and they have to be tough on the owners. And so we just continue to try to be balanced in how we find solutions to help, to help each owner. Because, for example, you may have a hotel that needs case goods, but because we've spent a little bit more, with the owner's permission, right along the way, the case goods are in better condition, and the owner can then forego that. Maybe we can win another year or two with the brand if we're in good standing otherwise. And so we really, it's the time for the most partnership maybe ever, as the operators and the owners work together to try to navigate all of these challenges. But it takes trust, it takes transparency, and you have to have credibility, because sometimes when the owner and the operator are just selling, right, a perspective, then you're not really partnering together in terms of finding solutions. And I think that when you have an established relationship with an owner and you can work together to find these solutions, it's difficult. We're in a difficult time, but that's where I think the best answers happen. So that's the goal. I think, with the pressure on margins, that puts pressure on all of our spending and labor. And I think that, delivering a guest expectation that makes the guests want to come back and builds the reputation of the hotel sometimes doesn't align with, CPOR margins and productivity factors and things like that. So we're constantly working to be, monitor, control the things we can control, and then work with the owner for the decisions that we think need to be made to maximize, what that individual property can deliver.
Absolutely. And like Kristie said, some have optimism about the second half of this year, the second. So any, tailwinds that you see, Eve, going forward?
Well, kind of speaking to the labor side, right? Our folks have worn many hats over the last few years, and they've gotten a lot of seasoning, and they've gotten a lot of experience. If this is, none of us have experienced anything like what we have, but if they haven't experienced a downturn before, I think that everyone is understanding now what can be done. And if they have the energy, and the support to get there, I think we are working with savvier operators these days, because they are excited about building back the teams. They're excited about making strategic hires, right? Maybe we were sticking to staffing models pre-COVID that we thought were the right staffing models, and now everyone has this fluidity and flexibility in how they're rebuilding teams that makes sense. And again, goes back to maximizing the value, right, for ownership. there's a lot of I think there are other tailwinds, right? We're seeing some strength in group where in, certain markets, right? That helps us get base back on the books. While we might not see BT back the way that it could, we are seeing some strength in rate, some strength in group. We're seeing some international travel come back, right, to gateway cities. All of these things that help us. It all starts with nothing starts until someone sells something. Not my quote,
Right.
but it is absolutely true.
Yes.
Right. And so I think we have to start with top line in order to maximize value. And if we're not laser focused on that at all times, then we have a much more difficult discussion along the way. So I think there's some good stuff. There's definitely good stuff out there. There's good stuff out there.
Good.
It's a lot easier to sell the dream when you can actually sell.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. And you
It's
know
not
what's
just
going
like-
on in your market, and you have the data and the tools and resources, and you know how to be strategic to sell what's happening
Now
in your area.
Now we just need some transactions. Then I think
Yes.
everything will start moving.
Yep.
And then those PIPs, the operator's favorite thing is the mandatory PIP.
That could be a whole other podcast.
Don't tell the owners.
So Eve, as you mentioned, all these groups coming back, we have group, international, whatnot. At that industry event that we all were at, there was a lot of talk about generations within the industry, both from a traveler perspective as well as the associate. Would you say that generations do really influence these business decisions?
Oh, I think they definitely do, right? You have, starting with design, you have, Instagrammable moments, which is probably overused at this point. You have all of the ways that we build now for folks to be working on their phone. For example, today I had a power outage about 45 minutes before this call. And so I am in the local coffee shop in the conference room, all set up with my Wi-Fi and my little net. So the design.
That's why she's so able to channel, this Generation Z mentality, because she's living it. She will be playing the part as the Gen Z.
I am ever curious, right? And ever flexible. Some might disagree. So I think you have design. I think you have and similar to what I just described, you have the increasing use and comfort with technology. It is what it is. It's not going anywhere. And you see it. Kristie and I were talking about, not only do you see it with the QR codes and all these things, right, that are becoming very commonplace within hotels and restaurants, but we were also talking about, from an employee standpoint or associate standpoint, how our companies have built out technology that, one, helps us all be more efficient, and two, is attractive to this new generation, because they're used to it, right? These kids in high school are doing things that, I won't tell you when I started using a Google Doc, but my kids were using it many years before I was. And that's not cutting edge technology, but it's a good example, I think, of the way things are going. I think that people want experiences, right? And we saw recently Hilton take the Graduate and hotels, and also AutoCamp, right? Yeah. And so I think that's a very interesting move on both of their parts in terms of trying to reach a broader audience. Although some would say once a brand affiliates, is the magic gone for the younger generation? I will say that others are smarter than I am in the business decisions that were made behind the scenes, and I think that there's a lot of money to be made with those two organizations. So I think there's a number of things out there that the younger generation is teaching us. Kristie and I were also talking about really trying to learn from our team members of this generation and making sure that we are meeting their needs, right? They are fast, they're agile, they're technologically savvy, they understand ways of doing business that are different and are relevant, right? Because there's a whole demographic out there. So how do we embrace that, and how do we make them have an employment relationship with us that they want to stay in? And it really kind of, there's twofold. One, it's what are we doing for their careers seems to kind of be a more prevalent way of thinking. And I would have to do some serious reflection. I probably felt that way myself out of college. I need to spend some time thinking about that. But what are we doing for them? But kind of on another note, how do we then manage that mindset to still move at the speed of business?
Yes.
And I was having a conversation with Raul Maranta, our chief commercial officer, last week. We were traveling together and we were talking about this, and he told me a story about a friend of his has a I don't know, teenage son, right? Maybe
Okay.
early 20s, maybe late teens. And so this kid works for a technology company, maybe rhymes with Snapple. And, and one of the techniques that they were using to build that kind of work ethic that we're familiar with was, in order to get a raise, there were a list of things that an employee would need to do. And one of them, as an example, is cover 10 call offs for your peers. Wow. And so you think back to, oh, we're in the hospitality business, call offs happen, be a team player. We need you to come in. We're going to thank you. We might buy you lunch, right? All these things. But so this kid, instead of being like dodging the manager's phone call, right? Like, I'm not going in tomorrow, I've already worked. He's now checking his phone at 10:45 at night, trying to catch the first shift so that he can make more money and then ultimately move up within the company. So definitely warrants further study. And I think we could talk for hours about all the things we have to learn. I will say I learn a lot from listening to how my kids talk about their work. Mm-hmm. And I try to build my own awareness and understanding about life these days. When we chat about how they feel about their job.
Because it really is about embracing it,
It is. Yeah.
Push back, but
totally.
Kristie, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Eve on so many points, and the technology thing is really the one of the major issues that sort of sticks out for me, or opportunities really. And I think the beauty of it, and that's always kind of been throughout generations. And I remember when I thought I was cool because I knew how to use PowerPoint, and nobody else, no one had ever created an image in PowerPoint before, and now. But I think what's so lovely about technology and the younger generations is that it does allow them to come into an organization and have a skill set that's truly valued from day one. It's, they don't know what they don't know on some of the business aspect, some of our business aspects, but they're able to contribute in a very meaningful way because they have that upper hand and sort of embrace. And I guess it's technology, and it also goes with just an attitude. And I hate I hate when people generalize generations, because that's ridiculous. Everyone's an individual. But I do think that, in my observation, they tend to be a little less risk adverse and willing to just kind of, it's not always that cloud hanging over your head of failure, where I think makes it a little bit easier to kind of jump in, and doesn't need to be sort of brought along in every step and say, I'll give it a shot. I'll try it and we'll see if it works. And so I think in combination there, those are real assets for a company that's looking to be nimble, looking to be cutting edge, looking to be strategic. And I would say that I learned just as much as Eve said from these our younger peers, but and from my children. Most days I'm just happy if I know how to work my remote for my TV at home, and this is like next level. And like I think it feels good. It feels good. It makes them feel appreciated, which we know is very important to retaining staff, which I think we're all very eager to do in this labor environment. So.
Well, and because we know the only way we're going to be competitive and do our very best is if we are have a great degree of diversity in all levels, right? Age included. So we need these perspectives to help.
Yes. When you guys were talking about jumping in, it reminded me of our reporter on our team who we hired 2 years ago when he was 21. And generally, he has jumped into every single thing we present him with, and he does it with such ease. And I love that attitude. It's, I think we all should kind of embrace that in some parts of our day-to-day work. But, it really is cool to see how this generation is really just embracing the workforce. And This brings us to the end of our conversation, which I could go on for a whole nother hour, but this was so much fun. I learned so much, and I appreciate you letting me in on your friendship and hearing kind of the backstory.
Life, Dana.
Yes.
We're friends for life. Now you're in the mix.
Yes. I'm going to send bracelets out.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you so much for having us. It was a magical moment when I saw Kristie from across the room. And I think that, work is sometimes hard, and it's the relationships and the people that and meet that make all the difference. And so grateful for both of you guys. Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank God you said it, Eve. Thank you.
I didn't write it down though, so
and thank you, Dana. So much fun. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dana.
All right, take care, you two.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. This episode of the Hotel News Now podcast network was recorded on March 25th, 2024 by Dana Miller and edited by Rachel Daub. Visit hotelnewsnow.com for the latest industry news every day.